In this moment, I breathe the very essence of life. In this moment, I hear the still small voice inside. I open to wisdom and truth. In this moment, I know what is mine and mine alone to do. I've gotta let love in. Let love in. Let love in. Let it in now. Peace will come. Peace will come. Oh, peace will come when I let love in. I've gotta let love in. Let love in. Let love in. Let it in now. I've gotta let it in now. Peace will come. Peace will come. Oh, peace will come when I let love in. Oh, peace will come when I let love in. Good morning, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. It's so good to be back with you all again. It seems like it's been a long time. I know it has not, but it seems like forever. This morning, we're talking about imperfect practices in the global themes of the Centers for Spiritual Living. And I love, well, I'm going to say I embrace Spirit's sense of humor and playfulness in that I went into a little edgy bit of perfectionism this morning when everything that I had set up earlier this week was not functioning the way that I would have preferred to have it done. And it's in that letting go. It's in letting love in, and love is my word for God. So when we let God in, well, first of all, let me back that up a little bit. Letting God in is kind of a misnomer because God is already in. We just don't recognize it, or we shut it off, or we let ego get in the way and we say, no, I can do this better. I know more. I know more than God does. And so the letting in is actually just giving ourselves permission to allow what already is. And some of that looks like incredible, chaotic imperfection. It looks like a messy, messy, messy world, particularly in the world that we are observing right now. And what I know and I see in that perfect imperfection, there are two things that I see going on here. I see the God in all of it. And I see the God in all of it in those who have been working for lifetimes, generations, the light workers, the new thought, the consciousness people that we have done this work. We have gone into the dark places. We have gone into the dark cave. We have had our moments of, oi, this doesn't look good. But rather than staying attached to the appearance, staying attached to the darkness, staying attached to the divisiveness and the anger and the hate and all of these things that are all fear-based, we choose to stay in the light. We choose to let God in. We choose to allow ourselves to see the God in every moment. And it is not easy work, is it? It is not at all easy work. But what I see happening is this shift, that we are in a tipping point moment of a make it or break it right now, I think. And it didn't just happen last week, and it didn't just happen 6 months ago, and it didn't just happen 10 years ago, and it didn't just happen even 20 or 30 or 50. This is human nature at work. And where the mass evolution of consciousness that I see happening, the lifting, the raising of the vibration of human consciousness into this next age that we have all been treating for and praying for and meditating about and directing our thoughts to, is stirring up a bunch of stuff, is it not? And that's on the global scale, on our personal scale. We know in this work that when we begin to direct our consciousness to the light, to the good, to ease and grace and efficiency and the right now and the light and the calmness and the balance and all of those things, everything that looks unlike it will come up to be healed. And when we get in the middle of it, we kind of go, well, wait a minute, that's not what I wanted. Peace. I wanted comfort. I wanted ease. I wanted abundance. Well, it's there. It exists in the potential in that one mind of which we are all a part. But when it gets stirred up in us individually, we go right back to human and saying, wait, this stuff happening outside of me. It has nothing to do with me. Well, it does. That's the good news and the bad news. Or the good news and the not so comfortable news. Is that we get the opportunity to look even deeper in the parts of ourselves that are unsettled, that are unhealed, that are unfamiliar. And unfamiliar in human nature is also uncomfortable. So our practices, our spiritual practice, our imperfect practices, is we keep showing up without an expectation that it's going to be a one and done and we're finished. Because the nature of us, the nature of our consciousness, as Ernest Holmes talks about, we are the souls forever and ever expanding. That's what we believe in. We are always evolving. We are always growing. We are always changing. We are always being urged. That divine urge is nudging us forward to keep evolving, so that spirit, God, whatever you want to call it, has a greater opportunity for its greater expression. And we say, well, that's not really fair either, because what if I want to do this over here? Well, we have free will. We absolutely have free will. But we continue to practice knowing our connection to that source. Being in such a place of surety and confidence and knowing, absolutely knowing, that we are not separate from that source. That is our practice. And some days it's smooth sailing, and some days it's like, oh my gosh, I get it. I get that feeling, that sense from the top of my head to the tip of my toes when I am an open channel, an open vessel, and I am in this beautiful communal dance, a loving embrace with Source. Those moments are absolute bliss. And it takes a lot of imperfect practice. Because if we think about it, there is really only one perfection, and that is the allness of God. And we are just exploring and pulling things back and investigating and experimenting. That's what this life is experimenting all of the ways that we can be in that connection. And our human part of it is generations and generations and generations of being taught that we are separate. That if we claim our divinity, there's something not right with us. And that is that human ego that has nothing to do with connection and everything to do with control. And I don't know about you, if you've ever had moments where you felt like you were out of control in your life and you kind of needed to herd cats to make everything right and comfortable and to feel better about ourselves, to feel better about myself. Most of the time unconsciously doing that control thing. And then we become aware of it and realize we can't change anybody else. We can't fix the planet. We can't heal the planet single-handedly, and we are not meant to. But our practice is we keep showing up, we keep investigating. There is no perfect practice. That's what I have come to learn. And just like playing the piano or singing or writing or doing math or learning to walk, we keep trying in a way that works for us. Yes, we have to have some commonality with 8 billion people on the planet. We have to have some way of communicating with each other so that we're not all just doing our own thing and bumping into each other. We have rules, traffic rules, and we have all kinds of forms and structures to help us operate in the human realm. But in the spiritual realm, our journey is singular. And when we recognize that everybody else is also doing their journey in a way that fits, trying to find that sense of freedom, that sense of bliss with something bigger than ourselves, we're going to bump into each other a lot. So the practice is to look within first, and that is the instruction of this. Go within. And like the Mary Oliver poem I loved so very well is the in those moments where you just want to scream, go do it somewhere. But don't spew it out into the world. As she says, there's already enough of that, enough crying. It's happening now. Is what I observe is that so many people are just screaming at the top of their lungs just to be heard and to be recognized, instead of taking it within and saying, what's going on within me? All this stuff outside of me is just a reflection of what's going on inside of me. So how can I change? What can I change about myself to have an observation outside of me that's different, to have a different experience, to have a greater experience of my connection with Source? And right back to it, it's hard work. And in that hard work and in that shouting and in that crying and in that screaming and the going wherever we go, life continues to go on. And the beauty and the power and the peace and the love and the abundance and all of those things of God are still happening while we are in our little zone of hissy fit. We can have the emotion. We need to have the emotion. We are human. We've got to move that energy. And we don't have to go on social media. We don't have to stand on a street corner with a placard calling names. We can have our human judgments. We can judge ourselves pretty harshly. And we can pull that back and say, is this the way that I want to live? Is this the way I want to live? If it's not, we change our thinking, and then we change our lives. So let's talk about mistakes for a minute. This is the fun part of this. Einstein said, anyone who says that they've never made a mistake has never tried anything new. And that's pretty true. If we stay sheltered in our place, no, saying no to life, we think we aren't making a mistake, but we are making the biggest mistake of all, which is to not be living fully into who we came here to be. That is a big mistake. Our perception of other people's mistakes. Some of this is that fun part I'm talking about. Some of the most incredible inventions in the world that changed human history were considered mistakes. Those who were trying and inventing and experimenting with things, trying to make one thing, ended up making something else that really did change the world. Some of those things, let's list them off here. Penicillin, potato chips. You say, how is that a mistake? It was a story of a tavern. Somebody came in, ordered French fries. They weren't crispy enough. They kept sending them back to the kitchen, again and again and again. This guy wanted really crispy fries. And the chef finally, in exasperation, sliced a potato very, very thin, fried him up, sent him out, threw some salt on him. Rest is history. Post-it notes. Post-it notes. Of course, now we've moved into digital post-it notes, but when those came out, at the 3M company, it was somebody who was actually trying to develop an adhesive that was even stickier. I mean, like super, like beyond super glue sticky. And instead, every experiment that went with that, it kept getting less and less and less sticky. They took a pad or just this piece of paper to a choir practice. This is the story. To a choir practice, and the guy had him stuck in his music, his sheet music, and the guy next to him said, "What is that?" You know, he saw him peel it off easily, and there was no residue, and he didn't think much of it. And it was like trying to market it for a while until this guy next to him said, "Hey, you got something here." Completely turned it around. So post-it notes. Let's see, what else have we got? Chocolate chip cookies. Yeah, the best cookie in the world. Ruth Wakefield of the Toll House Inn in Vermont had her drop cookies, her butter, whatever kind of drop cookies, had some chocolate bars, some Nestle chocolate bar, decided to break it up, thinking it was going to melt in the oven, and it did not. And that Toll House recipe that we see on the back of the Nestle chocolate chips came from that mistake. The best loved cookie in the world over, chocolate chip cookies. Velcro was also a mistake. Pacemakers, microwave ovens, cornflakes, Teflon, the Slinky, super glue. One of the ways that I learned to play music, to figure out songs by ear, was by mistake. All the mistakes. I'd be playing a chord, I'd hit a wrong, my finger would go to a wrong note, and instead of going, oh, I screwed up, it was like, wow, that sounded cool. That sounded really cool. It's the simple shift from this is wrong, this is bad, to, well, what about this? What about this? One of the things that when Thomas Edison was working on the incandescent light bulb, and the story is either there were, I don't know how many thousands of attempts to find the filament that would work without burning up. It was thousands of times, and he never saw any of them as a mistake. He just saw it was just like a checkbox that said, okay, that didn't work. Okay, that didn't work. Okay, that didn't work. Move on, move on, move on. Instead of agonizing, trying to make something into what it is not. In The Care of the Soul, Thomas More says, creative work can be exciting, inspiring, and godlike, but it is also humdrum and full of anxieties, frustrations, dead ends, mistakes, and failures. Creativity is, foremost, being in the world soulfully for only the thing that we truly make, whether in the arts or culture. It is, I'm sorry, let me say that again. Creativity is foremost being in the world soulfully for the only thing we truly make, whether in the arts, in culture, or at home, is soul. It is all experimentation. We are in a grand experiment as humans. How we get along with ourselves, how we get along with each other. And the fine line is that place where we lose track of source and start looking outside of ourselves to create, make it right. We start looking to other people and things to fill that sense of separation. That somewhere or another we all have it. We come into this world with this like, I'm not sure if I'm connected. And systems and institutions and faith traditions and all of those things have reinforced that idea for a long time until we started coming back to the light. As humanity started coming back to the light and saying, well, you know what? I think there's something else here that we can look at. And we have shifted so beautifully into this place of recognizing that we can have, individually, we can have our own personal relationship with a higher power. Many people know this. Many people still do not. Many people still think it has to go through certain channels. You know, you got to go through a middleman somewhere to get to the source. But in this teaching, we know differently. We have a direct connection because that connection is within us. We carry it wherever we go. It does not matter. It is always there. It is us who get our own things in the way that say, oh, I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough to do that. And we can shift that. And it is that simple of a shift, and it is that difficult to make that shift stick. So what do we do when we make mistakes? How do we get past that self, recrimination and beating ourselves up about mistakes? Own it. That's the thing. I think in this day and age particularly, as a society, we have gotten so far away from saying, I'm responsible, I'm sorry. And I'm sorry, an apology, an authentic, genuine apology can go so far to stopping something in its tracks right then so everything or that thing can be corrected. To simply saying, wow, I screwed up. How can I make it right? Because 9 times out of 10, we don't mean to. We're human. We mess up. And if we back it up again, it's not really messing up. It's trying something that didn't work. If it brings harm to somebody, we do what we can immediately to make amends or to solve that or to make it right. But with social media and so much these days, the divisiveness comes from that It's your fault, it's your fault, it's your fault, you're a horrible person, things that people say to each other online. I don't even go online anymore. It's horrendous, the way we treat each other. We don't tend to do that in person. Some people do. Some people have no qualms about letting you know how they feel publicly and loudly. I'll share with you that in my little town up here in Michigan, we went to the 4th of July parade, and it's a big deal. And usually people go down the night before to set up their lawn chairs along the sidewalk so they get a spot right there on the street. And we went down early the morning of the parade and set up our chairs, and then went to the little shop and had coffee and had breakfast, and came out to say, yeah, we're going to go outside and watch the parade now. And it so happens that we set up our chairs unknowingly right next to my neighbor across the street. We are on different sides of the political spectrum in our opinions about the way the world goes. But what was interesting, it was uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable, especially when the political candidates or certain groups were marching down the street in their little contingents. It was uncomfortable, but we were respectful of one another. There wasn't loud name calling. There wasn't pointing fingers saying, this is wrong, you're wrong, my view is right. There was a sense of respect, because in the grander scheme of things, we're good neighbors. We are good neighbors. We've taken care of each other's pets. We let each other into our houses when we've locked ourselves out. Medical appointments or anything else. We're good neighbors. But in that realm where that chaos is just constantly stirred, there can be so much stuff that doesn't look like God. But what I learned from that day was that may be the case. We may disagree, but in reality, from the day to day, the most important thing is we still take care of each other to the best of our ability. We set aside those things that otherwise look like they divide us. That to me is not a mistake. I don't think there was any mistake, cosmically or otherwise, that we set up our chairs right next to my neighbor. It was a lesson for me to sit in my discomfort and like, are they going to say something? Am I going to do something? Do I stand up and cheer? And what I found in myself was there are still things I believe in. And there were some things that went by in the parade where I refused to just stay silent. I stood up and I cheered because it meant something to me. And I know it made my neighbor uncomfortable. It wasn't directed at them. It was still standing up for myself, my God self, my expression in the world. So, in all of that, owning mistakes, like real mistakes, when we do something harmful to someone else, like I said, catching it in the moment. Don't shove it aside. Don't say, oh, I don't want to make... No, it's imperative that we clean it up immediately, as best we can. And the other person, the other party might not accept it, and that's okay, as long as we are doing the best we can to make sure we're aware that we care for everybody. We see the God in everyone. I like what author Rita Mae Brown says about mistakes. She says you can never make, good judgment comes from experience, and experience comes from bad judgment. We learn from our mistakes, or most of the time we learn from our mistakes. And there's an anonymous quote with this, says you can never make the same mistake twice, because the second time you make it, it's not a mistake, it's a choice. So we are always at choice. But it takes awareness, and it takes doing the work to stay in awareness that, number one, we are all divine expressions. We are all individualized expressions of the divine, of the one. We are all doing the best we can to figure it out. We are all living in the mystery. And being able to step back from that and hold that. Keep showing up as love. Keep showing up as respect. Keep refusing to go into that place where people are shouting and crying loudly. And instead stepping back and saying, what in me needs to be settled or healed today? In that regard, I think there's not really any mistakes. It's just we keep doing the best we can, knowing that God is in all of it. So let's take that into treatment and meditation. I invite you to take a deep breath. And if your feet aren't already on the floor, go ahead and set them down and ground yourself. If your arms are crossed or your hands are crossed or any part of you has got something that feels like you might be holding on to or blocking energy, just take your hands, shake them out. Set them gently in your lap or at your side. And I affirm that place, absolutely affirm that place, that we sit in the middle of God because God sits in the middle of us in every moment of our lives and beyond. Everything that came before, everything that is showing up now is a reflection of that consciousness. And what I affirm and know is that Christ consciousness, that absolutely unmistakable place in us, there is that piece of us that knows we are never separate from it. I speak my word for myself, and knowing it, I can speak it for myself, I speak it for everyone present. Not only present in this Zoom call today, anyone who watches it in the future, and everyone on the planet and beyond. Who knows? What I know is that divine light, that place in us that knows, that place in us that has never been harmed, that has never been abandoned, that has never been betrayed, that pure spirit is brought forth beautifully, gently, lovingly, joyfully in each and every one of us. And I know and affirm that in these times of the appearance of chaos and separation and divisiveness, that spirit is still very much alive and well in us all. And so I know that there is an even greater bringing forth of that light, of that love, of that compassion and respect. And there is courage to do so, to simply stand in the truth of who we are as individualized expressions of that one, to stand in that truth and in the face of everything else be able to say, I hear you and I respect your viewpoint, and I ask that you respect mine. Simple human consideration and courtesy and respect. And in any moment where we feel the fear that we are somehow separate from Source, what I know and I affirm for each one of us is that a simple breath and a simple inward glance to the heart space, the soul space that sees that light and brings it forth, allows everything else to fall away of its own accord. And so knowing that there is a beautiful, extraordinary evolution taking place in our individual consciousness and as a collective, into a world that does indeed work for all. I bless this knowing. I am grateful for this knowing. I am ecstatic to know we are a part of something amazing. And that amazing is simply God. And so with gratitude and joy, I release these words into that law, that perfect, non-judgmental, non-discriminatory law that only says yes. And knowing it is so, we release and say and affirm, and so it is. Amen. I'm doing the best that I can, the best that I can with what I got. When I remember that God is my source, what I've got is more than enough. I'm being the best that I can. Imperfect practice. The best that I can with who I am. When I remember that God is my source, who I am is more than enough. When I'm aware that you care enough to do the same, this is where, oh, this is where we let go of all that useless blame. When I'm aware that you care enough to do the same, this is where, oh, this is where we let go of all that useless blame. We're doing the best that we can, and we're doing it with love, 'cause we remember that God is our source, and that's always more than enough. Yes, that's always more than enough. Yes, that's always more than enough.
Thank you so much, Kit. What a delightful, how delightful it is to have you with us and have your wonderful music. Were all of those your songs? Yes, good. I'm so grateful for the talent that is expressed through you. Thank you, God.